Greetings everyone, this is Ehav Ever, and I'm going to be doing a short video called Silly Challenges to the Oral Torah, or the Totophoth. And this will be part one. So to begin with, I decided to do a topic that's come up in a number of occasions by a number of different groups of people, and today's topic is, are tefillin supposed to be metaphorical? Now, I got this idea from just watching a couple of videos where people, sometimes Karaites, sometimes Samaritans, and just people in general who have an issue with the Oral Torah who will say something like, for example, that out of the Mitzvoth, for example, an example that Tefillin was something made up by the rabbis. Basically, their claim is the intention of the Torah was not for Jews to physically bind something or anything to themselves, that the mitzvah was actually metaphorical. Um, Now, the question is, okay, well, what does the written Torah tell us? So first of all, when dealing with this issue, the Torah uses a word that's somewhat ambiguous called Totophoth. And the Aramaic translation of a Totophoth is Tefillin. So what it says in the Torah in Exodus 13, verse 9, is Torath Adonai b'ficho ki b'yod chazako b'hotzi'acho Adonai miMitzrayim. So this is one of the first statements that is made about tefillin, where it says that you'll have it as a sign on your hand and a remembrance between your eyes, so that you will be like the Torah Adonai, the Torah of Hashem, will be on your mouth and also on your hand. And that you remember that He with a strong hand He brought you out of Mitzrayim. So when you get to the next portion of the Torah that mentions Totophoth, what it mentions is that in Exodus 13, which is verse 16, it says, So translated, this says, and it will be a sign on your hand, and a Totophoth, which is like to be strong, because with a strong hand, Hashem brought us out of Mitzrayim. And then the next places where it's mentioned is Devarim, which is would be chapter 6, verse 8, and it says there, and essentially it's the same kind of thing, where it'll be you'll tie it as a sign to your arm, and it'll be a Totophoth between your eyes. Now here in Devarim 11:21, it mentions Now I'm going to focus on this one, because in two places there's a certain word that's mentioned, and there's part of the statement is uksharatem otham le'od. Uksharatem is what you see in the red. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is the word uksharatem means you will tie or bind. So it's basically from the shortish, the three-letter root kesher, kuf shin rish. So essentially, the problem with the claim of something of Totophoth being metaphorical, meaning that you're just metaphorically doing something, or you're not actually supposed to physically do something, is that at what point is the word for tying and binding not meant to actually tie and bind something? If there's a metaphor, then you would definitely need some kind of oral Torah to tell you that, okay, in this situation, you're actually supposed to tie something or bind something. In this situation, it's all metaphorical. But if you look at the text that I just quoted not too long ago, there's nothing there that gives you the idea that you're actually doing something metaphorically. The words used is that you're actually placing something somewhere. Then you get into the definition. Well, what is the hand? What is the head? Or what's between the eyes and things like that? But still, you would get the impression just from the simple, plain sense of the text that you're actually supposed to tie something, because it's very specific about where to tie it. It isn't just some out in the air, metaphorical sense. It doesn't sound metaphorical when you're using an actual word to tie. Now let's look at an example where people who make this claim against the idea of there being a Totophoth, of being tefillin, something that you actually bind, where they'll say, okay, in this situation you actually do something physically, where you could actually look at this and say, well, maybe this is metaphorical also. And this particular mitzvah is tzitziot. Now on the left side, you see what's a Torah Moshe Jewish tzitziot, and on the right side you see the Karaite ones. Now it must be noted that Karaites wear tzitziot, but they don't wear Totophoth. They don't wear tefillin because they believe that it's metaphorical. Now the important part here is where it says in the Torah concerning the tzitziot, Deber al bnei Yisrael v'amarta lahem v'asu lahem tzitzit. Now when you look at this, the part here is what you want to look at, where it says v'asu lahem tzitzit. Now this part here, again going v'asu lahem tzitzit, the problem you get into here is if you want to say that this is strictly a physical thing, you have to physically do something here, is First of all, the verb here, walsu, to do, doesn't give you the idea you're actually supposed to tie something. It just simply is like to do, where you could say, well, why is this not a metaphor? So the two things here, just looking at it real quickly, we have Totophoth and you have Tzitzith. So first of all, in terms of Torah Moshe, it's very clear that Totophoth, just like Tzitzith, is something where you actually have to physically do something. Just the wording used for Totophoth would be more obvious than the ones used for Tzitzith, because Tzitzith is like to do. Okay, well, maybe that's metaphorical. Maybe I'm just metaphorically supposed to do something, but it doesn't tell you what a Tzitzith is. And that's the other thing. Both words are ambiguous in terms of the Torah. There's nowhere in the Torah where it's explained what a Totophoth is or tzitziot is. But one group decides that they're actually going to like do something physically with one, and it decides with the other one, nah, I'm not going to do that. So in summary, again, I wanted to make this as short as possible. It's clear from the written text and the words used that they're speaking of something that requires an actual tying. So therefore, this couldn't be something that's metaphorical. And if it was, you'd have to have an oral Torah to tell you, hey, by the way, don't do anything here. Don't tie anything. So this is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever, and just want to do something quick, and I'll probably do a few more of these quick ones.